Let's have a very honest talk about the tabletop role-playing game hobby, especially D&D. And we're going to focus on old school going into the new school. But before we get there, let's look at video games. When it comes to people playing video games, does the majority play the game straight? No. The majority mods, cheats, makes adjustments, makes the game easier for themselves. It's common practice. When you go back to the 80s and you're looking at people playing D&D, here's the truth, and I don't care what you hear from content creators, the majority made changes. They didn't play it raw. The majority pretty much cheated. They modded the game, made it easier for themselves. And you can see some of the development coming from that. As we move forward into WotC and other games, you can see where those changes, right? Where the ease of gameplay comes in. You notice how that moves forward, but the old hardcore style of old school D&D is not what moved forward. That is not what caught the market. That is not what created sales. Look at 3rd edition, feats, and all these other benefits to make your character way more powerful, make the game easier. It's not much different with 4th edition, even though 4th edition is its own little monster. But when we get to 5e, it's the same thing. Easier to play, right? Like they almost hope you don't mod it because they've already modded it for you, right? They've already made it easy for you to play. And that has helped 5e. There's a lot less cheating going on in 5e because you don't have to. It's already built into the game. But these aspects are not built into the old school D&D games. But when you really examine, how people played back then, if you were really there, really participating, and not just in your own little home group, right? But you're out meeting people, you're meeting public game masters, players that, that are in the thousands playing in public, that don't have friends at home or a family at home. That's where the majority of gaming happened, right? So when you look at that, what was really going on in that little world? If you were to go to game clubs or shops or what have you back in the 80s and 90s, you would see people pretty much what you might call cheating, modding, making the game easier. Back in the 80s and 90s, there was a hardcore minority group that did things like play the game raw. They were very strict people. But they were a minority even back then. And they're still a minority now. But a lot of them have very loud voices. So you'll see a lot of content creators, in the old school part of the tabletop role-playing game hobby, representing this minority opinion. And they push it like it's going to be successful. But it wasn't back then. It wasn't really what sold the game. The game drops off at one point. And when they start selling the game to a new group of people with WotC, what do we find? A bigger base of players and game masters that do want an easier game than old school. Look, I'm not promoting modding and cheating in that way. I don't want to make the game easier. I want the game to be challenging, and I have no issue with the hardcore gameplay from old school D&D. It's not a broken issue with the game. It's just harder to play, right? It's more challenging. But, being a realist, I understand that people, the majority, don't really want that. They don't want it now. They didn't want it then. There is a minority that wants it, and if you could get them all to buy your game, you can make a little bit of money, but you'll never make the type of money, say, that Matt Colville makes now, even without selling a game. He'll still make more money than you, just say, doing something like YouTube. Like, look at the OSR. A lot of the OSR games are made, based on entertainment and other ideas, and even the pictures that you see in their books are all aimed at people that might have purchased these games back in the 80s and 90s. But we have new people, and there's been new entertainment that has influenced these new people. It's hard to sell these old ideas to people, especially when you're putting them in old paint, right? Like, you're not giving new colors to what you're putting out there, right? You're really not lining it up with something new. And you see a little bit of this with, I think, the game Shadow Dark. It was painted as something old. It has some old art, but what does it have new? A woman. And she's definitely more appealing to the new crowd. And there's some 5e elements in that game. And the game is definitely easier than old school in certain ways. Well, you put that whole package together, and she got what? 4 or 5 times the amount that any OSR person putting out products has gotten? Well, yeah, easy, right? It's not hard when you're playing a bit to this stuff that people really want. That's when the majority will show up and purchase your game. But what's happening if you're just repackaging old school and the changes you're making are not changes that are going to appeal to the majority? Again, you can make a bit of money off the minority that likes what you're putting out, but understand it's a minority. And you're never going to change the minds of the majority of people. If they were going to be into what you're into now, they would have been into it back then. They never have been. And we can preach at them. We can yell at them. We can, we can go on and on forever till we're blue in the face. It's like talking to the wall. They're never going to change their minds. And that's one thing I think a lot of people in the old school don't realize. They're still having that fight as if they're going to change the minds of people to what? Jump over and play their game? Well, it's not happening, right? The OSR has some success, but it's only because there's still there's an old crowd that does cycle in a bit of new life. Not much. A small percentage of younger people do cross over to the OSR, but it's a small customer base that has been there forever, right? People just stop serving them. So if you serve them, you're going to get some money. Well, the more popular ones, the more popular OSR games are going to get more money, but they're still not going to get much money, right? And how embarrassing is it that some woman on the outside with some 5e gimmick and stuff like this can just walk into the OSR, make a game with some of the elements that the other OSR games don't have, grab that majority, make tons more money than anyone else making products in the OSR, and then walks away like it's nothing. You are not going to change how the newer people, the majority, approach these games just by preaching at them, insulting them, yelling at them, and then telling them to try some OSR game. You have to do what I'm doing, right? Go a bit neutral, not call these people idiots, and then not tell them what game they have to play to please you, right? What I do with my advice is I just give some old school ideas that they can try to apply, to their approach to any game, right? So I'm not telling them that they suck. I'm not telling them that they're no good. My advice is not telling them what game they have to play, but it is advice that is based on principles from the old school. The principles that led to some of the old school gaming that us old guys love, right? Well, I've taken those principles and I put them into my advice. And again, I don't try to line it back up with the old school or tell new school people that first AD&D or whatever is better than your game and then start implying that I'm better than they are. Because I don't think that opens anyone's mind. And that comes from a lot of content creators in the old school that are part of the strict minority. They constantly imply that they are better than people. And then with this turn-off attitude, they then turn around and say, you should play this game. And I think some of them actually expect that will work. But it doesn't work. If you keep telling people that, in not so many words, that you're better than they are, and that they're no good, well, you're not going to draw those people to what you're doing. And if you look at the old school in 2023, you can see the results of years of what I'm criticizing them for. Doing this. It has not grown the old school. It hasn't made the OSR better. People aren't making more money. They're still just making a minimal amount of money when they could make tons of money. And again, if you don't believe that there's a lot more money in the OSR, look at the game Shadow Dark. She made a joke out of people like the RPG pundit. She walked in, gave the people what they wanted, and she got her money. And that's it. And the majority have been telling us for years that why we preach at them what they really want. And we keep hating them for it. But they're not adjusting to what we want, so they hate us for what we like. And we need to, we have to come to a realization that what we're doing is not working, and then take a new approach. Like, stop implying that you're better than every fucking other person in the hobby. Start being fair-minded about, how you approach any of these topics. And then stop telling people what game they should play or what game is better than what they are playing. And start pushing old school principles out to them through gaming advice, like I'm doing. And that's what experienced people, real experienced people in the old school should be doing. We should be mentors. We should be people that the new people can come to even if they're playing 5e. And I've opened that door. I have a lot of 5e people that come and talk to me, even though I'm an old school DM. It's because I don't take this approach where I'm always implying that I am better than they are and they suck for what they're doing. I don't do that. And so all I do is give advice and give old school principles, and then I hope they try to apply that to some of what they're doing. And in that process, they'll get closer to what, I'm doing than they are now. And I'm not going to win the argument just by telling them that they suck and they should just change what they're doing. That's just not working. It hasn't worked in decades. It didn't work back, in the old school. It doesn't work now. Anyway, for now, take care. You know what you can do? You can hit the like button. You can share the video. Oh, and there's another button you can press. That one that lets you subscribe to my channel for more content. Oh yeah, there's that bell thing. You can press that so you know when I've uploaded a new video right away.